Good morning, everyone, and welcome members and those tuning in over the internet to the Sunset Subcommittee. Ms. Rudy, please call the roll.
Good morning, this is Jennifer Rudy with the Research Division. First, I would like to ask if Senator Lang is present.
I am.
Wonderful. Senator Pickard.
I am here.
Perfect. Vice Chair Spearman.
Present.
Perfect. Assemblywoman Kasama.
I am here.
Perfect. Assemblywoman Marsola.
I'm here.
Wonderful. And then Chair Howdigi.
I am present. Thank you so much, Ms. Rudy. Indicate
Thank
that
you.
subcommittee members are present. Again, welcome members and welcome everyone who is joining us remotely. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to go over our basic housekeeping items. Please be sure to mute your microphone when you are not speaking to minimize the background noise. For the individuals on Zoom, the chat feature is only to be used for technical assistance with BPS. It is not to be used for any communication between members or by presenters, again, unless you are requesting technical assistance from BPS. Members, please keep your video on. It helps us ensure that we have a quorum during the meeting. Members, please keep your microphones muted when you are not speaking to minimize background noise. Witnesses who wish to provide the Sunset Subcommittee members with additional information or have their complete testimony or handouts included in the permanent record should provide a paper or electronic copy to our subcommittee secretary. You can find his contact information on the subcommittee's website. When testifying, please remember to turn your microphone on and then clearly state your name and the entity you represent at the beginning of your testimony. I would like to remind presenters to also remember to state their name before answering any questions from our members. This just helps the subcommittee secretary with minutes. Meeting materials provided to the subcommittee members for this meeting can be accessed on the subcommittee's webpage. Anyone who would like to receive electronic notification of and access to the subcommittee's agendas, minutes, and final report can do so by going to the Nevada Legislature's website and following the links provided. With that, members, let's go ahead and get started with our agenda. As noted on the agenda, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and up to 30 minutes. There will be public comment period at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. Today's virtual meeting format is important for us to keep everyone safe, and I want the public to know that public comment may be provided in 4 different ways, all of which are listed on today's agenda. You can provide public comment by calling 1-669-900-6833, then entering the meeting ID followed by the pound sign. Today's meeting ID is 841-8955-0400. You can also email your public comments to sunset@lcb.state.nv.us and mail your written public comments to the Research Division at 401 South Parsons Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701. And last, by faxing your public comments to 775-684-6400. LCB's broadcast and production services staff will interact with those making public comment by telephone and facilitate participation in the meeting. With that, let's go ahead and move into public comment. BPS, would you please add the first caller?
Good morning. Yes, thank you, Chair. You currently have no callers in your queue at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Okay, committee members, that moves us into agenda item number 3, which is the public hearings concerning the terminations, modifications, consolidation, or continuous operation of the committees we selected, the entities we selected at our last meeting. This agenda item gives the subcommittee the opportunity to consider the boards and advisory committees listed on our agenda for review today. We have 5 entities for review. These were selected by us at our January meeting. I will remind the members and the public that pursuant to statute, an entity under review is required to submit information about its members, its powers and duties, and its budget, a history of its meeting, an assessment of its effectiveness serving the people of Nevada, and by filling out those forms that we approved in our January meeting as well. By statute, the Board or Commission has the burden of proving that there is a public need for its continued existence. It is my understanding that there is someone joining us from each board or advisory committee who will provide a brief overview of their board or advisory committee. These individuals will be available to us to answer any questions that we may have. All documents are available on the subcommittee's meeting page, including a document providing background information and legislative history for the entity being reviewed. Our first board for review is the State Historical Records Advisory Board. The Sunset Subcommittee reviewed the State Historical Records Advisory Board in March of 2014 and voted to recommend the board's continuation without any suggested changes. Director Freed and Mr. Strom from the Department of Administration are here to discuss the board. Director Freed or Mr. Strom, if you could please provide the subcommittee with a brief overview of the work of the State Historical Records Advisory Board, and then we will move forward with questions from the subcommittee. So when you are ready, this floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Freed, for the record. I serve as the Director of the Department of Administration. I am joined by my colleagues from the Nevada State Library, Archives, and Public Records Division, and I will turn it over to them to talk about the State Historical Records Advisory Board, otherwise known as SHRAB. So I'll let them introduce themselves and they can give you a brief go over of the materials that we submitted to your research staff previously.
Thank you, Director Freed. Good morning, committee. This is Mike Strom. I am the administrator of the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records Division. I will be giving you a brief overview of the State Historical Records Advisory Board, but before I do that, I'd like to give Cindy Shane, who has joined me this morning, a chance to introduce herself.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. I am Cindy Shane. I'm from the Department of Administration, the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records. I'm the new Deputy Administrator of Archives and Records. I started 2 weeks ago, so thank you.
Okay, for the record, again, this is Mike Strom, and a brief overview of what we submitted a week or two ago. The questionnaire, of course, and the attachments. The attachments, many of them we felt didn't apply, unfortunately, because the board has not met in a few years. The State Historical Records Advisory Board is funded by the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, the NHPRC, and they are the funding arm of the National Archives. The purpose of the board is to promote the importance of historical records and improve access to those historical records, to create better communication among professionals who work in the archives and records field around the state, and to help us facilitate training and projects and other things that help with records management and help bring these historic records to light, to provide them with better access to people and researchers around the state who are interested in Nevada history and in quality records management of Nevada's records. The board was first created in 1976 and established in NRS in 1989. I see from the previous testimony in 2014 that the Nevada board was the first board in the United States to be recognized officially in statute. As I mentioned in the material I turned into the subcommittee, the last NHPRC grant was received in 2015. The last meeting was held in 2018. There are reasons to believe that the board will be dormant no longer. The main one being that we've just hired a new state archivist, and that is Cindy Shane, who just introduced herself to you. Cindy comes to us from UNLV. She's well connected. in Nevada and in archives and records management circles. She has already reached out to the existing board members. There are 3 board members right now. They are engaged and they are planning to meet to compile a list of possible future committee members so we can fill the vacant board spots and go forward. She's already reached out to the NHPRC to see when the next grant deadline is. It is in June, and she is hoping to prepare a grant request to move forward and get the board revitalized. NHPRC does offer a smaller level grant, around $10,000 or so, for agencies, for dormant boards to sort of jumpstart themselves and move forward with strategic planning and reaching out around the state to determine future initiatives. So with that, I'll stop and await questions.
Okay, let's try that again now that I'm unmuted. Thank you so much for the overview, Mr. Strom. I appreciate it. I'm going to first turn it over to committee members to see if they have any questions. I do have just 2 to 3 questions for you, but I'd like to get started with the committee members first. So committee members, do you have any questions for any of our presenters? Okay, I'm good. I do see that our vice chair has a question, and then also Assembly Member Kasama. So we will start first with our vice chair, and then Assembly Member, we will move over to you for the second round of questions. Vice Chair, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I probably missed it, but I'm looking to, the question really is, are we talking historical from the standpoint of just records? Are we talking historical from the standpoint of buildings, historical? I mean, I'm trying to get a context in which when we talk about historical records. Does that make sense to you, or is that completely convoluted?
No, absolutely. This is Mike Strom. For the record, Madam Vice Chair, the SHRAB, the State Historical Records Advisory Board, often they do focus mostly on records, on paper records, on electronic records, on photographs, things like that. Less so on artifacts or buildings. Certainly records that document the history of buildings are within the scope of the State Historical Records Advisory Board. Nothing usually in archives and records, nothing that you would find in a museum. So any sort of physical artifacts usually fall out of the scope of the State Historical Records Advisory Board. But again, any record that documents those things falls within.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Yeah, so the next question would be, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, here in the South, we push on for Tule Springs to make sure that was a national monument, even though it was at the federal level, but it was still part of Nevada. And so my question would be, any records pertaining to lands or contributions from indigenous people?
Mike Strom, for the record, Madam Vice Chair, absolutely. Those records would certainly be of interest to the SHRAB in helping to preserve those records and make them more accessible. We would look to, the archives or the institution tasked with maintaining those records and keeping those records, and try to help them with those projects. We wouldn't necessarily move in and take over the records, but absolutely, those would be the sorts of projects that the State Historical Records Advisory Board would be interested in promoting and assisting if possible.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Assembly Member Kasama.
Thank you so much, Chair. My question is, one, what is the definition of historical records? Is it things that are 20 years old, 50 years old? And before your committee was established, who was handling them before?
Mike Strom, for the record, thank you for that question, Assemblywoman. The definition of historical is often what institutions around the state decide that it is. If there are records in archives or in any institution that they want to keep, be them 20 years old, be them 100 years old, we're interested in helping to preserve and help promote those records. In fact, electronic records, often what we think of as old. Back when I started in the archives profession, we used to think nothing was old before 50 years old. But, often with electronic records, those records, by the time they're 40, 50 years old, they would have been migrated 2 or 3 times already to different systems and everything. So electronic records age more quickly than paper records. So it is really up to the agencies which we assist and work with to determine whether or not they're historic. Please forgive me. I think I've forgotten your second question.
My other question was, before your committee was formed, your board was formed, who was handling this before?
Mike Strom, for the record. I don't believe anyone was handling it in this way. The State Historical Records Advisory Board is a unique institution or a unique board, within the state, and we have a unique mandate to go forth and help these agencies with these projects. So I don't believe anyone was. However, in many cases, our job is to help promote and to help people do a better job or to give them more resources to do their job. So in many cases, the projects that we're assisting with are being done locally. Just we're helping to provide more knowledge and more training for those projects.
Chair, could I have a follow-up?
Yes, Assembly Member, please.
Could you give an example of like a recent project, just so I understand better, like you helped somebody digitize and put it all in electronic format, or just maybe just an example I think would maybe help us understand better?
Mike Strom, for the record, absolutely. Some common projects that the SHRAB would help with would be to digitize, say, newspapers or collections of papers, and assist the local archives in putting them online so people can research them or access them remotely. Researchers can find them from afar. Another project might be to help archives, small archives or libraries preserve their records to either mostly, I guess what I'm thinking of is paper records or photographs, to purchase acid-free folders and materials to help preserve these records long-term, money that may not be in their budget otherwise that we could work with the NHPRC to help get them budgeted for, so to preserve those materials long-term. Another type of project may be to provide advice or expertise in the arrangement of papers to help our local archives or libraries create an inventory of those records to make it easier for researchers to find them in the future.
Follow-up, Assembly Member Kasama, or are you okay?
No, I'm good. I said thank you. I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Well, and thank you, Mr. Strom. Members, any other questions? Okay, and I just have a couple for you, Mr. Strom. I just want to start by congratulating Ms. Cindy Sheehan as well on her new position. I think you had said she started like 2 weeks ago, so congratulations. We look forward to the work you're going to do. I just had a couple of questions because you did say that one of the priorities was going to be filling the board vacancies, but in the information that you provided, it only looks like there was 1 vacant seat, but I believe the other 3 were terminating this year in 2022. Will those people be eligible for renewal, or are your board positions, they have term limits?
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Strom, for the record. We do, the existing board members will be eligible for reappointment if they so choose. I do believe that we have 4 vacancies right now. We checked with the site on the governor's webpage, so I apologize for any confusion in our reporting to you about that. So yes, 4 vacant, and I believe 3 that are about to expire, but are seem very willing and anxious to renew now that we have Cindy here to help revitalize the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strom. And I do have another question, because you did say that there's a grants deadline coming up in June and you guys would be applying for it. But I see you said you've been inactive since 2018. Your last meeting was 2018, but the last time you actually applied for a grant from the NHPRC was in 2015. So during that 3-year period, how did you guys function as a board and fund yourselves as a board without any grants?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Mike Strom for the record. That was before my time here. I'm fairly new here as well. I'm older than Cindy. I've been here 8 months now. My understanding is that they probably, well, I can't say for sure. I assume that they met virtually, but I am not sure how they did that. And from my records, they did not meet regularly by any means.
Okay. Well, it looks like they met annually. They met in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. So I'm curious if the that they applied for in 2015 was enough to carry them through those 3 years. I mean, if you don't have the information now, I mean, please feel free just to go and investigate and then send it to us at a later time.
I will gladly do so. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Freed.
This is Laura Freed for the record. You're right. The last draw of the NHPRC grant was, I believe, FY15, and I think they carried forward some of that remaining grant into FY16, if my research in the state accounting system does not fail me. And you're right, they met sporadically, and they haven't met recently. But the more recent meetings, I think Administrator Strom is correct. Those were done virtually, but they're in our research of the fiscal history of the board's operations. It looks like there was some de minimis travel expenses paid for, and the budget in which the SHRAB activities resides is generally supported by the general fund. So we think, and of course, I've been in my position for 2 years, but before that, I was a budget person. So we think that the general fund probably supported these de minimis expenditures, which is not exactly a correct way to go about it. So that's the other reason we'd like to, the Deputy Administrator will be renewing our application for the NHPRC grant, because that's really the correct funding source to support the operation of this advisory board.
Thank you, Ms. Freed. I appreciate that. And then I just have one final question. It's just regarding your website. I noticed that the developer for the Division of State Libraries, Archives and Public Records website isn't the Division of EATS. And so I just wanted to get some information, just some reasoning behind that decision. And then if there's going to be a cost difference, like is it going to cost more, or is there going to be a savings when you migrate onto the EATS platform?
Mr. Strom, shall I field this one? All right. Right. So as we reported, yes, it was, we cannot say why the decision was made to get an outside developer. This is a couple of NSLAPR administrators ago. It's not my preference. And of course, I think Administrator Strom and I both agree that we would prefer to migrate with the new content management system that EATS is rolling out now. We're going to migrate to EATS, and we're going to have EATS web services support it. I will have to get back to you on the web services cost in the budget and the split between the library budget and the archives and records budget to see if there would be an additional cost that needs to be built in the budget or a savings. I do not want to misspeak on that point.
Thank you, Ms. Freed. And I know I said I had one last question, but I just noticed in your questionnaire that there was no, under question number 26, the board wasn't recommending any changes. But I mean, under the NRS, you guys are required to meet 3 times a year. And since 2015, it's been what, 7 years? Wow, 7 years. You've been unable to fulfill that NRS requirement to meet 3 times a year. So if that's something that, I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be done now that Ms. Shin's in position, but if it's not, I know you requested no changes, but that is a statutory change that can be made to help you guys not be in conflict with NRS, to change it to something like meet at call of the chair. So just a suggestion, something for you guys to think about before our subcommittee ends, because we will make recommendations to the Legislative Commission, and that can be a requested recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's good to think about. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Strom, Ms. Freed, Ms. Sheehan. Welcome, I should say, and congratulations to you, Mr. Strom, as well, on your new position as well. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, members, moving on to our next entity under agenda item 3. Our second board for review is the Merit Award Board. The Sunset Subcommittee reviewed the Merit Award Board on March 15th, 2016. The subcommittee voted to recommend the board's continuation with some statutory changes. In 2017, Senate Bill 72 was enacted by the legislature to incorporate some of the subcommittee's recommendations among other provisions. Joining us are Director Freed, welcome back, Ms. Baker and Mr. Richardson from the Department of Administration to discuss the board. Ms. Freed, I'm not sure if you want to start us off. And
I'd love to. Hello again, I'm Laura Freed. I serve as Director of Administration. I am joined by my colleagues from the Division of Human Resource Management, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and they can I'll let them take the stage and tell you a little bit about what's been going on recently with the Merit Award Board.
Thank you, Director Freed. My name is Frank Richardson. I'm the Administrator of the Division of Human Resource Management. And with me today is Rachel Baker, who is a personnel analyst with the Division of Human Resource Management and the Merit Award Board member. So if I can continue on, can you hear me okay?
yes, sorry.
Okay, very good. Would you like me to give a short overview of the program? And then
Yes, please,
any
Mr.
questions?
Richardson, just a brief short overview before we open it up to committee member questions.
Okay, very good. So the Merit Award Board is the controlling authority of the Good Government Great Employees Award. The program was created way back in 1967 to reward employees who had money-saving ideas that they could contribute to the productivity of Nevada. The last meeting of the board was January 23rd, 2019. I believe this is because there have not been enough board members for a quorum, but Rachel can confirm that. They are tasked with, under NRS 285040, to investigate, review, and evaluate merits of employee suggestions. The Merit Award Board budget is budget account 1345, and it has been supported by the general fund appropriations. NRS 285030 limits the operating expenses of the Merit Award Board to $5,000 per fiscal year. It is important to note that the 2021-2023 biennium, the governor recommended and the legislature approved 0 appropriations for the Merit Award Board. In the previous 2 biennium, the legislature approved minimal operating expenses for this board. During the budget reductions implementation of 2020 and 2021, the operating costs for the Merit Award Board reverted to general funds, leaving only funding for the Attorney General cost allocation payment for FY 2021. So that's a very short overview of the program. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richardson. I appreciate that. Committee members, I will always go to you first. So if you have any questions for Ms. Freed or Mr. Richardson. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any from our committee members. So I am going to go ahead and just jump in. I do have a couple for you, Mr. Richardson. Just regarding the board vacancies. So there's currently 2 vacancies. Are you guys in the process of fulfilling those?
And I'll let Rachel Baker answer this question. Frank Richardson, for the record. I am not sure if we've made that request. As you can see, there are no funds to operate this program at this time, and it might be moot to continue on. So I'm not sure if those requests have been made. Rachel, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Hi, for the record, my name is Rachel Baker. I'm a personnel analyst with the Division of Personnel, Human Resource Management, sorry about that, and Secretary to the Merit Award Board. We just learned of ASME's appointment or representative, and we know that the budget has appointed somebody, but we do not know who that is.
Okay, so the Office of, so the Office of Finance has appointed someone, and then there has been an appointment by AFSCME for their representative on.
Correct, just recently.
And Ms. Richardson, you brought up, you just created a new question for me. You had mentioned that it might be moot to appoint these two positions because there is no budget for them to meet, but how long do these positions, how long is each term for one of these positions once the appointment's made? Because if there is, say, coming into 2023, money in the general fund to provide money for this merit award, would those people still be serving, or will there need to be new appointments made?
So from my understanding, and Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, Frank Richardson, for the record, apologize for that. They would still be serving at that time. Rachel has been a member on the board since 2016. Rachel, if you could maybe elaborate the terms.
Yeah, the merit, just the terms of the board members.
Just the terms of the board members. Thank you.
Rachel Baker for the record. Mr. Richardson kind of touched on that. My appointment to the board has been since I started in the position about 2016. We've had a few that have been on the board for a while due to turnover, change of administration. Their terms weren't very long. I don't know if there's a specified term limit, however.
If I may, this is Laura Freed for the record. NRS 285, I do not believe specifies a term of service for this particular board, unlike so many other boards that are out there in statute. So you could continually, this is why Ms. Baker continues to serve, and this is why the governor's finance office representative usually continues to serve unless and until the director of the GFO decides to change that person.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then just one last question. I know in the on question number 18, the dates of the immediately preceding 6 meetings, you listed your meeting as January 23rd, 2019 as your last meeting, but that meeting was canceled, correct? I think the website shows it as a canceled meeting.
Yes, that is correct, due to lack of quorum.
Okay. Well, I do see that we have a question from Senator Pickard, so I'm going to turn it over to Senator Pickard and then Assemblymember Kasama. I saw you raise your hand, so we'll go to Assemblymember Kasama next.
Hey, Madam Chair, I was wondering about this, and I'm glad it's come up in the discussion, but I've got to ask the question because the purpose of the Sunset Subcommittee, of course, is to determine whether or not a certain entity needs to continue. There's no budget. The meeting was canceled because of lack of quorum. We've had 2 vacancies for a while. Nobody seemed to notice. Do we really need to continue this board?
So Frank Richardson for the record. Director Freed, did you want to answer? I apologize.
I was gonna field this one unless you're dying to, Mr. Richardson.
No, thank you.
Laura Freed for the record. Senator Pickard, that it's a really salient point. If you look at the history of the suggestions that was submitted by Ms. Baker to your staff ahead of the meeting, we've had very, very few suggestions over the years, including the several that I've looked at just in the 2 years plus that I've been the director, that the directors of those agencies thought were implementable and demonstrated a real cost savings. So, it's one of those, this is one of those things that sounds great, but it's pretty difficult to come up with a suggestion that's really easy to implement, demonstrates a cost savings, and of course, yes, we don't have any money to give an employee an award, even if they reach those hurdles. So, it's not for us to say what the policy should be, but we did say in our submission that, if it is the will of governor and the legislature not to fund the Merit Award Board, perhaps we should align the statute with budget realities, unless there is a desire to appropriate for the future. But I can say that DHRM is working on more broad-based ways to support employees. This is designed to incentivize employees to come up with ideas that improve governance. Well, first of all, in my experience, the vast majority of state workers believe in good governance and aren't here for the money, and they certainly aren't here for the great benefits. They're here because they care about public service. So I would prefer personally, just speaking for myself, and I think DHRM would prefer to focus our efforts on supporting the majority of our employees rather than having sort of a de minimis amount of money in some account that they have to clear several hurdles to get to.
Well, and thank you for your candid response. I'm glad to see that the people on the other end of this are thinking similar to what was crossing my mind. At the end of the day, I think it's wonderful that we recognize the successful efforts of our employees. And I know, having been attached to different entities, different organizations over the years, they do it anyway. I mean, they always come up with a way of identifying their key people and rewarding them. Usually it means everybody pitches in $20 or whatever. They do it anyway. And so you've confirmed in my mind that we really don't need this board. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Assemblymember Kasama, and then we will go to Vice Chair Spearman. I saw your hand just come up, Vice Chair.
I think probably a lot of it has been answered with Senator Pickard's question as well. But I was just wondering, when was the last time we actually gave an award? When was the last time an employee knew about this award structure and somebody in a department even knew about this and it went through the process and somebody actually received an award?
Mr. Richardson, please go ahead.
I was going to, Frank Richardson for the record, I was going to pass this to Rachel Baker since she has been involved with the board since 2016. Like Mike Strom, I've been in this role for about 8 months, and the Merit Award Board has been inactive since I've taken over this role. So Rachel, if you could tackle this one.
Morning, for the record again, Rachel Baker. During my time, we have not awarded any of the employees. I'm not entirely sure when the last employee was given an award. I can research that if you would.
No, that's fine.
Like
Thank
that.
you.
Okay.
I believe,
Madam Chair, this is
yes, I believe that was one of the attachments on the agendas.
it is, yeah.
So if you go to the agenda item 3, exhibit number B2, there's 45 pages of them filling out their form, and then the second to the last, up at before the organizational structure, is a list of all of the awards they've given out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. First of all, who knows about the merit program, the cost savings? How is it advertised? And maybe this is redundant, but if nobody's applying or is active, what's the outreach effort? That would be number one.
Okay, I will take that question. Frank Richardson for the record. I don't believe we've been doing any outreach since the program has been in limbo, and you bring up a really good point. I think these programs, when they're around for a long time, become stale, and if we don't continue to promote them, most of the employees are not aware that this is going on. If you will take a look at the list of the many submissions, or not many, but the submissions we've had over the last several years, you will see that in many cases, The suggestion has been rejected for various reasons, and I think maybe that could be part of why this program isn't being used as much. If an employee submits an idea and it goes through this process and then it's rejected without any other recognition, I think that could be demoralizing to some of the staff, and they may have given up on the program over time. So if a program like this were to be successful, there would have to be several steps along the way to recognize that employee's contribution, even if there isn't a cost savings. And that could be part of it too. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. And it presupposes my second question. And that would be one of the things that when you fill out government information or a form or whatever online, or you get something in the email, it will say, think before you print this. If you don't have to print this, then don't. And on other forms, you'll see at the very bottom, you'll see this phrase, paper reduction, Federal Paper Reduction Act. And that is a direct result of somebody putting pen and paper together and saying, how much money are we spending on forms? In 2013, I think it was, I had a bill that would require all the agencies at some point in the future, and I can't remember exactly what date it was, but to make sure that all their forms were available online and other information was available online. And after asking research to come up with the numbers between September of 2012 and February, I think it was, of 2013, I want to say that the government spent in excess of $700,000 just on paper stuff. That's paper, that's ink, that's processing, that's packaging, that's all of that stuff. So the federal government has a template that might be useful in this process, where people just put in a suggestion, and whatever department that it goes to, it goes there, and they look at it, figure out, is it something that will be relevant to cost savings? And then if it is, it's the result, or it is the requirement of that department to then get back to the person and say, hey, tell me more about this. And if there is indeed a cost savings, I believe one of the things that happens is there is a percentage of the cost savings that is allocated to the program, and then goes to the person or the personnel who are making that suggestion. Because there are a number of things that we do in our state government that's really redundant. If we were meeting in person and someone was looking at my space behind my name, they would probably not see any binders. And they don't see any binders because I'm not doing anything with them. And so that's paper, and that's money that could be saved. And I thought about it in 2013, specifically because we were asking state employees to take furloughs because we didn't have money. And so sometimes it's not about how much money you spend as much as it is how much money you save. When I was a company commander, I had a little container. This is before we had internet and stuff like that, but I had a little container there. And so anybody could go into the first sergeant's office and drop a suggestion in. And at our staff meetings, I would go through them with the other platoon leaders, et cetera. And so that may be one of the things that we can do. We may be trying to do this more convoluted than it really needs to be. But if we could go to, and I'm looking here at the, I think it's the federal statute. It's 242.43. I'll give it to Ms. Reedy and make sure that it's in the chat. But there are certainly other things, and there are other states that are doing this as well, and it's not as cumbersome. So really, we're talking about someone putting in an idea, sending it to whoever it goes to, whatever department it goes to, whatever agency, let them evaluate it. If there is indeed a cost savings, then it comes back to the committee in email form and not paper. And then going through the whole process, we can do that electronically now. As we have seen, Zoom has probably saved us, I don't know how many thousands of dollars in paper, because whatever materials we receive for meetings, we have to print them out. And we have to print all of them out if we want to touch the paper and feel the paper and smell the ink, So there are ways that we can do this that I think are not quite as cumbersome. And I'm happy to discuss that if that's something that you all are interested in. But making sure that it should be on a website. Every agency could have on their website. If there are suggestions for cost savings, please click on this link, or please send this to whomever. And then someone or someone's get that information, send it out to whatever agency is recommended for, and then let them handle it. So you don't need 15 people in the committee sitting around, talking about any, meeny, miny, mo. You just, this is the committee that he goes to. You all take a look at this. Let us know if this is going to present a cost savings, and make sure that we make a big deal out of, if it is, make a big deal out of the person or the people who suggested that, because then that becomes more incentive. And the more we can save in state government, I think the more cost efficient we can be when it comes to salaries, when it comes to PERS, when it comes to a lot of things that, state workers give up. They give up because we don't have the money. But if we can save the money, pull that back in, and then reallocate it in those areas that will benefit the people who are committed because of public service, you shouldn't have to take a vow of poverty just to do public service. And that's all I'm saying. And I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Okay. Ms. Freed and Mr. Richardson, it doesn't look like we have any other questions from the committee. I do appreciate you guys being here with us today. Thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, committee members, the next entity we are going to be reviewing is the Subcommittee on Patient-Centered Medical Homes, which is a subcommittee of the Advisory Council on the State Program for Wellness and the Prevention of Chronic Disease. This subcommittee has not been previously reviewed by the Sunset Subcommittee, and I believe we have Ms. Lily Heltzer, the section manager, here with us to discuss the work of the subcommittee. Ms. Heltzer?
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. Just to summarize what was previously submitted, the Patient-Centered Medical Home Subcommittee is established under NRS 439. It met from 2017 to 2019. It struggled throughout that time to maintain an established quorum, originally with the goal of meeting 14 times, but it only met 7. That committee did have some successes in carrying out their objective to study delivery of healthcare through patient-centered medical homes. They were able to identify a number of other state efforts, barriers, actions taken, challenges during that time, but ultimately in 2019, the parent committee, the chronic CWCD, the Advisory Council for Wellness and Prevention of Chronic Disease, did decide to discontinue the Patient-Centered Medical Home Subcommittee, as it was believed that a number of the objectives had been carried out, and also, again, to the difficulty in establishing quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Heltzer. Committee members, questions? Okay, I do have a couple of questions, Ms. Heltzer. Can you walk us through some of those successes? Because I was looking at the responses that you guys said, and it said, it said that there hadn't really been any successes because you guys were unable to meet quorum, and so you guys weren't meeting. And so could you walk us through what some of those successes that you guys had accomplished during 2017 through 2019 were?
Yes, thank you, Lily Hilser, for the record. Some of those successes were the identification of other state efforts, including Oregon, New York, Michigan, and what they were doing with patient-centered medical homes. But for each of those other state efforts that was identified, it was also identified what the challenge to implementing a similar model would be in Nevada, including the medical transformation process is extensive and burdensome. Cost of recognition to become a patient-centered medical home is quite steep, and the cost of additional staff needed to be a patient-centered medical home is prohibitive. In addition to those extensive costs, there's very little reward for the recognition. There's not an advanced payment model or little to no incentive in Nevada. Also, the health information exchange just really wasn't helping any of the clinics with the process. Despite that, all of those challenges, there being little to no incentive in particular, about half of the clinics in Nevada today are patient-centered medical homes. Almost all of our FQHCs either are patient medical homes or becoming a patient-centered medical home. And they do this even though there's not really a lot of incentive. They do it just because they recognize the value and the increased improvement in patient outcomes. So those were just some of the things that were identified, but ultimately it was felt like, well, we studied the environment, and the committee cannot really change the environment on its own. That combined with the continuing problems establishing quorum just resulted in the eventual dissolution of the committee.
Okay, and just actually, I'm going to go to, okay, just one quick question, because I know that the Department of Public and Behavioral Health has identified several barriers to the entry of becoming a certified patient-centered medical home, a lot of the same ones that you just went over, but do you think that a study of the healthcare through patient-centered medical homes is still necessary? Do you think that a study is necessary?
I believe that, not just me, but also having spoken to the Advisory Committee on Chronic Disease and Wellness Prevention, which oversaw patient-centered medical homes, there hasn't really been any changes in the environment that would warrant any new study or that would successfully move these efforts along.
Okay, perfect. And then, and then I did see that you guys do recommend dissolution, but you guys have already dismantled the committee, correct?
Correct.
Dissolved the committee. Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, do we have any other questions for Ms. Heltzer? I'm going to do one quick last check. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much to Ms. Heltzer. I know that the statute authorizing the creation of the subcommittee is not mandatory. So the only thing we could do is just statutorily change the authority to create the subcommittee. But since it's already been dissolved, then thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Heltzer. We appreciate you being here with us today. Okay, members, this brings us to the Advisory Committee to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission. This committee has not been reviewed by the Sunset Subcommittee. I believe we have Ms. Biddleston and Dr. Rice with us here. Dr. Rice from the Division of Child and Family Services to present. Oh, there we are. I just saw you turn your cake. Hi, Dr. Rice. Thank you for joining us. Do we also have Ms. Biddleston? Okay, there she is. I just know. Okay. Dr. Rice, Ms. Biddleston, I'm not sure who wants to start off, but when you're ready, just an overview of the Advisory Commission, and then we will move forward with questions from the members. If you could, while you're giving your overview, if you would just go over to the committee why you guys submitted two, because I see that you submitted one for the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee, but you also submitted one of the review forms for the, Advisory Committee and then the Oversight Commission. So there was two forms submitted. So if you would explain to the committee why two forms were submitted in case there was questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is Dr. Dominique Rice for the record with the Division of Child and Family Services. I'm the Deputy Administrator of Quality and Oversight, and I am 4 months in, so this is very new. I will allow Leslie Biddleston to introduce herself as well.
Good morning, Leslie Biddleston. For the record, I am the Chief of Juvenile Services within the Division of Child and Family Services. I am the primary staff person to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission and to the Advisory Commission. So I'm here for questions or to help Dominique if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So our initial submission of our Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission, as well as the Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission or Committee, was submitted in an effort to kind of tie together the request of AB 472 and meeting the requirements associated with AB 472. The very first one is the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission. This commission is currently has eight vacancies vacancies that we do have. Those vacancies are nominated by the Senate. 2 of them are nominated by the Senate, 2 by the Assembly. 1 is the Deputy Administrator of our Division of Child and Family Services, or designee, a District Attorney, representative of law enforcement, and a member that is under the age of 24. This ties into the Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission, as the Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission was developed to provide not oversight, but recommendations to JJOC, which is the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission. I will turn it over to Leslie to give more detailed information about each one of those committees that she oversees.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Leslie Biddleston for the record. So the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission and the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board was established as part of AB 472, signed into law in 2017. AB 472 was a very large juvenile justice reform bill, and all of that can be found in NRS 62B 600. So 600 outlines the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission, 605 outlines the advisory board, and then the remaining portions of 600 outline all of the elements of AB 472, that those reform efforts. It is my understanding that the JJOC and the advisory committee were established to oversee the process and the implementation of all of those reforms that were outlined in AB 472. So that's why we provided both information on the JJOC and the advisory board together, because they really go hand in hand together. Moving on, all of members were appointed to both the JJOC and the advisory board around December of 2017, and the JJOC and the advisory board always met together. The advisory board did not have separate meetings. They just attended the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission boards. I also have to say that no appropriations came for either one of these boards, the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission or the advisory board. So the terms of each board or each entity is 2 years. They are governor appointed, and members that are appointed may reapply if they so choose. So some members on the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission have served almost 3 terms now. So going back to the advisory board, all 6 positions were originally filled. However, only 2 members of those advisory committee appointees attended the JJOC, and when their terms were over at 2 years, they stopped attending, and we have not had any new advisory members appointed by the governor or anybody attending any meetings in more than 2 years now. So I thank you. I can take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Biddleston. Members, before we get started with questions, I do want to remind everyone that the Zoom chat is specifically only to be used for technical assistance from BPS. Thank you, Ms. Biddleston and Dr. Rice. Okay, I do have some questions for you. And before I go to the committee members for questions, Ms. Biddleston, I do, and maybe you can help clarify. So when AB 472 was passed and the JJC was replaced by the JJOC, I know that the JJC and the State Advisory Group had access to $15,000, I believe it was annually for grants, correct? Now, did that carry over with AB 472 and the establishment of the JJOC and the new advisory group? Did those 2 groups still have access to that $15,000 federal grant? When I read the material, I just wasn't clear.
Leslie Biddleston for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. So to explain that $15,000, I have to provide a little bit of history. The state of Nevada has participated in the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Act since about the mid-1980s. That is a federal act, along with participating in the federal act. The state is eligible for Title II formula grant funds, which is a federal grant. As part of that grant, there is a requirement to have a state advisory board, or state advisory group, SAG. So historically, the state of Nevada had what was called the Juvenile Justice Commission. It served as that SAG. So when AB 472 was signed into law and the JJOC was created, the governor at that time wrote an executive order, which I can provide to the committee if necessary. But that executive order formally disbanded the JJOC and moved those duties to the JJOC, therefore allowing the JJOC to have that $15,000 that is earmarked for the SAG, which is now the JJOC effective 2017. So yes, that funding is available.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Just wanted to make sure I read it exactly like you explained. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to go to the committee members for questions before I ask my couple of questions. Committee members, do you have any questions for Ms. Biddleston or Dr. Rice? Assembly Member Kasama.
Sorry, let me unmute myself there. So my question, I don't know if this quite makes sense, but would the Juvenile Justice Commission function well with oversight without having the advisory committee? Will they still comply with AB 472? I guess the real question, is this advisory committee necessary, or would the Juvenile Justice Commission function well on its own? Hope that makes sense.
Dr. Rice, do you want me to take that question?
Yes, you can. I was trying to see if you were, but that's yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Dr. Rice for the record.
Leslie Biddleston for the record. Yes, the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission would function fine without the advisory committee. And I think it's important to note that the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission are voting members. All of the members do have a vote. However, the advisory group were non-voting, so they were unable to vote on anything. They could provide recommendations, but it was actually the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission that was responsible for all of the decisions as voting members.
Thank you.
Committee members, any other questions? Okay, I do have a couple, Dr. Rice and Ms. Biddleston. Now, I know I sat in Judiciary in 2017, and I know I remember that DCFS had actually proposed the amendment to create the advisory group so that there would be a separation of powers. Correct? So can you tell me a little bit about, why they would meet together if the intention of the advisory group was always to kind of be an advisory group and have that kind of separation of powers?
Leslie Biddleston for the record. Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that. I was not part of the planning piece of the establishment of the JJOC or the advisory board. But what I can tell you is what happened after AB 472 was enacted. That there were no separate meetings for the advisory board, and they were just included with the overall Juvenile Justice Commission.
Okay, it's, and knowing what the intent was, right, and knowing what actually happened, I think it sounds like the advisory group wasn't acting in the manner in which it was intended to act, right? There was concerns from the Department of Child and Family Services about a separation of powers. So maybe bringing them in to figure out how we can, instead of termination, right? is there a function for that advisory group still? Is there a responsibility that it's supposed to execute? I'm just one other question on the advisory committee. Is there any federal requirement to maintain it, to maintain the oversight, like the advisory group as an advisory group to the oversight committee?
Leslie Biddleston for the record. No, there is no federal requirement to have an advisory commission or board to the overall Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission. But I also do want to point out something that's extremely important, is the makeup of the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission as it is currently written in NRS 62B600 does not meet the requirements of the federal state advisory group. There are some different conflicting requirements within those. I did not provide any information on where there are discrepancies, but I can if necessary. So I just want to point out that the advisory board is not required federally, but what is required federally is not necessarily what is in our state statute.
Would you be able to send that to us, to our committee, our research analyst and legal counsel for the committee, so that they could share that with all of us on the committee, Ms. Middleton, where those conflicts are between our state and federal requirements?
Leslie Biddleston for the record. If I know who to send it to, I would be happy, because I don't know who your analyst is, but I would be happy to send that information.
Okay, well, today we have Ms. Jennifer Rudy sitting with us, and so I will make sure that she reaches out to you. Okay, and then I do have a couple of other questions. So you kind of answered one of them already, right? If there would be any impact if we do repeal the advisory committee. But the second question I have is, you had mentioned that there was difficulty in securing funding. I'm looking at the form for the advisory committee. Can you explain why?
Leslie Biddleston for the record. No, I cannot explain why. So when AB 472 was signed into law in 2017, there was a large appropriation. I believe it was, please don't quote me, but I believe it was about $1.5 million. But that $1.5 million was not specifically earmarked for the JJOC or the advisory board. It was to implement a statewide risk and needs assessment. It was to bring the state and the county entities up to speed on a more current juvenile justice case management system. It was to implement a quality assurance review process. So all of the funds went towards initial implementation. Another thing was the JJOC, the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission, hired a vendor to create their 5-year strategic plan. So those are what all of those startup costs were for. There were no sustainable costs going forward for anything. So the state and the counties had to absorb all of those ongoing costs. For example, there was an ongoing cost to use the selected risk and needs assessment. We pay currently, I believe it's $20,000 annually to use a validated risk and needs assessment. So while there were startup funds, there was nothing in that appropriation for any type of sustainability to include the JJOC or the advisory board.
Okay, I believe in the forms that there was the difficulty came when describing federal funds, that there was difficulty in securing federal funding for the advisory group.
Leslie Biddleston for the record. So if we had, or let me back up. The federal funding available to this group is the Title II formula funds. We can only provide $15,000 out of that formula grant fund to support any type of state advisory group or anything like that. The formula grant funds historically over probably the last 6 years have been between $395,000 and $500,000. That is an annual amount. We are required to subgrant 66% of that out to community providers. So there isn't a lot of funds left over out of that for other purposes. So like I said, the only federal funding available for this is currently the formula grant, and it's only $15,000.
Okay, thank you. And I promise one last question for me, Ms. Biddleston, but I do see that our vice chair has raised her hand. So, and that was a perfect segue into my next question, because I know DCFS has stated that the commission has not been able to qualify for the federal grants because of the statutory membership makeup. Is this what you were explaining earlier, that there was conflict within our statute and what was required by the by federal to give us funding, federal government to give us funding under that Title II formula grant, or is this completely separate? Because I know if we need to make membership changes, that's what our Sunset Subcommittee is here for, to give recommendations. So do you know, is that what you were referring to, or is this separate?
Leslie Biddleston for the record. So when I talk about federal funding, I'm only talking about the Title II formula grant funds. So there was a period of time where the federal government, which is an entity under the Department of Justice, they are called the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP. They froze our federal funding due to the fact that we did not have an appropriate makeup of our group. So our federal funding was frozen for about 6 months. The piece that we were missing at that time was a licensed clinician. So we were able to fill that role with a private licensed commission eventually when a position came open. But to be perfectly honest, Madam Chair, it is a struggle to meet those federal requirements, especially when we have vacancies. Our biggest problem, to be perfectly honest, is we have too many government employees. And so the state advisory group federal requirements require a portion of the public, maybe a parent of a member in the system. You know, other pieces that are missing are child welfare, education. Those types of things are just not found on the current makeup of the commission. And when we are making decisions about system-involved youth, it would be beneficial to have all those other systems that the youth are involved in to have a voice.
And I did see that that was part of your recommended statutory changes. If you would just, if you could give us maybe more detail on how we can help improve that so that we're not in conflict with what the requirements are federally.
Leslie Biddleston, for the record, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe when I provide the written material comparing the statute with federal requirements, that will answer your question. So yes, it's hard to explain, but once I provide those written materials, I believe you will have that answer.
Thank you so much, Ms. Biddleston, and committee members will make sure that those are shared with everyone on the committee. That was it for me. Ms. Biddleston, I'm going to turn it over to our vice chair. I see her hand is up. Vice chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just going to ask, and I don't know if it's applicable, but last session, Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe Moreno, I think it came through the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, though, was Assembly Bill 445, and it was codified in statute 14th of June, and it's in chapter 545. But the whole purpose of that legislation was to make sure that, and I think it was housed in the Office of Government Administration, to look and find grant opportunities that where we were probably leaving money on the table, so that we might be able to maximize that with whatever matching funds. So that may be an answer. It may not be the answer, but that may be part of the answer to make sure that we have whatever monies are available. I know that there are several programs in the federal government now that are designed to stem the tide of school to prison pipeline. And there are also a number of grant opportunities available in the Robert Woods Foundation and some others out there that are looking at making sure we are investing in our children before they wind up in the system. So take a look at AB 445. And as I said before, it's codified in Chapter 545, and it was a bill that was carried by Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Yeah, 445 is the bill number. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Committee members, last call. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Biddleston and Dr. Rice, for being here with us today. We appreciate all the information. Look forward to the information you'll be sending over. Okay, committee members, that brings us to our last entity that we are reviewing today, which is the Medical Laboratory Advisory Committee. This committee has never been reviewed by the Sunset Subcommittee. Presenting for the committee is Mr. Wapples from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Mr. Wapples, thank you so much for joining us. When you're ready, please, a brief overview of the committee, and then we will go to the committee members for questions.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members and guests. I'm joined today by Cody Finney, and I would like to have her introduce herself this morning first.
Good morning, Chair. Cody Finney, Deputy Administrator for Public and Behavioral Health. For the record, I'm very glad to be here to support Mr. Waples and answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Finney, and welcome.
Good morning, members and guests. My name is Brad Waples, and I am the Acting Manager for Medical Laboratory Services for the state of Nevada. And I'm here today to respond to the importance of the Medical Laboratory Advisory Committee that's found in NRS 652. The Advisory Committee consists of physicians, PhDs with specialty knowledge in their area of expertise, laboratory directors, and medical technologists.
Mr. Waples, if I could ask if you could get closer to your microphone. I'm not sure if anyone else was experiencing it, but I couldn't hear your remarks.
Oh, okay. Is it better now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So the Advisory Committee, which consists of physicians, PhDs with specialty knowledge in their area of expertise, laboratory directors, and medical technologists who offer insight to the fast-evolving technology of medical laboratory testing and help to find a balance between regulation and community and state need. The committee also helps assist in determining laboratory personnel, licensure, and recommendations to the board for laboratory qualifications for personnel, continuing education, and revision and updates to the bylaws of the committee.
Thank you so much. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Waples or Ms. Finney? Okay, Mr. Waples, I just have one. I know that the last time it looks like the subcommittee met was in 2016, but you guys are planning on meeting soon, correct? Or could you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brad Waples for the record. Yes, we had personnel changes right before the COVID pandemic started in 2020, exactly 2 years ago today. And during this time, we found that there was necessary regulation updates in which we'd like to have the committee to be part of. Since the personnel change, I can't really speculate as to the reason why that there weren't any meetings with the Medical Laboratory Advisory Committee. So I can't really speak to that piece, but I do find that it is important with the ongoing laboratory evolution that we have that they be part of an advisory committee in which they can offer their information.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Finney, please.
Cody Finney for the record. I would just add to what Mr. Waples indicated that the division appreciates being having this brought to our attention. We do feel that having that expertise from the medical laboratory community in a formal way to help us make sure that those regulations we're proposing are appropriate and not overly burdensome or missing anything that we need to do to protect the safety of the public is very important. The staff had maintained an active membership, but we did identify some places where in between parts of the division, the communication had broken down. And so we feel we can really benefit from having this formal advice from the community of medical laboratory specialists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finney. And I do, that leads me to a good question, because I know that there is no requirement for you guys to meet periodically. So, I mean, that is a recommendation we can give, that we require, since you guys value the input and you think it's valuable, right? The input from the industry, we could recommend a requirement that the board regularly meets at least once a year. Because I understand, you know, after 2020, why maybe there was no meetings from 2020 to 2022, where you guys found that it would have been helpful to have meetings, but there was a 4-year period from 2016 to 2020 where the committee also did not meet for, you know, any reason. So if the contributions that they give, the committee gives, are valuable, one of the recommendations we could make to the Legislative Commission is for periodic meetings by the committee. Is that something that you would be interested in? Oh, Ms. Finney, I believe you're on mute.
Cody Finney for the record. I'm certain that the requirement for an annual meeting would align with our recommendations for what is needed. I certainly would defer to Mr. Waples if he has any additional information or a different periodicity that he perceives is helpful, since he is our true medical labs expert.
Brad Waples for the record. Yes, I agree with what Cody said, and that is we would be happy to do once a year and have that as part of the statute. We also have bylaws in which we're going to be presenting to the committee for revision because of the need to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Waples and Ms. Finney. I do have a question for you from our senator. Senator Lang, when you're ready.
Thank you. On your 7-member board, do you have all those people appointed already? I guess it's an 8-member board, but are all those people appointed already? And I ask that question because in listening about boards over the last year, it seems to be that people can't get people to fill their boards. And I know that your board, in looking at the detail, is pretty specific on who the members have to be. So are you having any trouble filling your board?
Oh, Mr. Waples, I believe you are on mute.
Sorry. For the record, thank you, Senator Lang, for that question. We are not currently having any issues. We do have one vacant position currently for a medical technologist, but all of the other positions, all the other positions and committee members are still good until the end of this year. So we are current with all of our members except for one vacant position.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee members. Last call. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Waples or Ms. Finney? Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here with us this morning and for your presentation and for filling out the forms. Thank you. Okay, committee members, that moves us on to our next agenda item 4. This next order of business is to select 2 new boards and commissions to replace 2 entities that were identified as repealed or expired after our January 26th meeting. We had made that selection of boards and commissions to review. As we were getting ready, we realized that 2 of those had already been repealed and eliminated. And those two boards are the Board of Review for the Division of State Lands, State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. It was repealed by Section 14 of Assembly Bill 378 during the 2021 legislative session. The next was the Advisory Committee on Transportational Storm Water Management of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. That committee expired by limitation on June 30th, 2021. So members, when you received your agenda and your meeting material for this meeting, we included again as one of the meeting materials, the list of boards and committees that we were going to review this interim. The next attachment was a list of all of the boards, commissions, and similar entities that exist for review. I know that I had identified a couple that we could possibly review, but I want to open it up to the subcommittee members first to see if there is any boards that you would like to see added to the list. Vice Chair, I know you weren't with us that very first meeting, so I want to reach out to you too to make sure that maybe we did not include any board, commission, or similar entity that you had interest in reviewing and coming before us this interim. And if you guys don't have any, I'm happy to make recommendations. So I will, you guys, I will give you a couple of minutes to go through that that item in the meeting materials to see if there's any boards that you would like to select. So we'll give you till about 10:30, and if not, I would like to make some recommendations.
Madam Chair, just so I'm clear, this is Keith Pickard for the record. The list that was on the agenda as item 4B, that's the list we're choosing from, is that correct?
Let me go to the subcommittees meeting page. I have it up. 1 second, Senator Pickard, and I will tell you. So under meeting material, if you scroll to the very bottom, there's agenda item 4A and agenda item 4B. Agenda item 4A is the master list of all boards, committees, and similar entities. Agenda item 4B is the selected committees that we selected at our January 26th meeting so that you can cross-reference. So if you see in agenda item 4A that you want to review, you can cross-reference it with 4B to see if we've already selected it.
Okay, and so 4B includes the two boards that you just mentioned, but otherwise these are the ones that we discussed last time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what I don't see are the two boards that we discussed. The
Barbers and Board of Medical
and Barber Board. Can you remind me what we did with those?
Yes, instead of we are going to have them come. They are on our agenda to come before the committee, but we didn't formally select them so that they didn't have to fill out the entire form.
Oh, that's right.
Having them present on our selection.
That's right.
The areas where we had concerns on our January 26th meeting, we are having them come before us and specifically address those those areas of concern, not so much the form questions since we just reviewed those. But we will have the Barbers Board and the Board of Homeopaths,
yes. Okay, perfect. And I apologize for not remembering. But yes, now that you mention it, I do recall. So thank you for that.
Okay, and committee members, while you guys look at that, I identified 4 boards that I thought would be great for review. The Board to Review Claims, which is commonly referred to as the Board to Review Petroleum Fund Claims. That was established in 2015, but has never been reviewed by the Sunset Subcommittee. Also, there was a board that hadn't been reviewed in 6 years, the Advisory Committee on Participatory Democracy. It does look like they regularly meet, both of those boards do, but that board was established in 2003 and hadn't been reviewed since 2014. So just one of the reasons they came across as an interesting committee boards to review since they hadn't been reviewed in 5 to 6 years. 2 of the other boards I have thought about reviewing, and I would like to review this together if it's, if the committee decides to go this way, but the Nevada Taxi Cab Authority and also the Nevada Transportation Authority, both of those were also reviewed over 6 years ago. And so I know that out of those 4, we can select 2. Any preference from the committee? Committee members, any preference? Oh, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I think the Taxi Cab Authority, I know I hear quite frequently that there should probably be some type of review in terms of oversight. So I think that's probably one. I've heard enough people ask me that question that I think that would be a legitimate request.
Okay, Vice Chair. Well, Vice Chair, since you feel the Nevada Taxi Cab Authority, if we review that one, I would like to review the Nevada Transportation Authority with that one together. So if the committee members are okay with replacing the two committees that were already repealed, that were chosen in our January 26th meeting with the Nevada Taxi Cab Authority and the Nevada Transportation Authority, I would accept a motion.
So move.
I have a motion by Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I have a second by Assembly Member Marzola. Okay, committee members, any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. You can just raise your hand so I can see everyone. Okay, perfect. It looks like that passes unanimously. So we will add those two committees to our review. Okay. Hey, committee members, that actually brings us to our last agenda item, which is our second round of public comments. I would like to remind everyone that we do keep public comment to 3 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking has an opportunity to do so. I would like to remind everyone that there is the 4 methods to submit public comment. You can call in, you can fax in your public comment, you can email your public comment, and you can mail in your public comment. With that, I would like to turn it over to our BPS to see if there was anyone waiting on the line to make public comments.
Thank you, Chair. You currently have no callers in the queue at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, BPS. Committee members, any final comments before we adjourn for this morning? Okay, well, I appreciate you guys all being here and being so efficient. We are done before the hour of 11. So thank you, committee members. I do want to remind everyone that our next 3 meetings are scheduled for Wednesday, March 30th, Wednesday, April 2nd, and Wednesday, May 18th. I will see you guys in March for our 3rd meeting. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We are adjourned.